Hi everyone. Today we're going to cover a topic that's been asked for a couple times, and that is to create an email from scratch from start to finish. In previous videos we've covered little snippets and different tags and techniques, but I want to cover the requested one here, and that is to start from scratch and come up with a complete email in one video. So we're going to do that today. What we're going to create is this. This is a mock-up of a email I just kind of came up with. Tried to come up with one that would use as many different tags and layouts as possible, so you can get a feel for things. And it's got a main header. We're going to throw an image in the header. We're going to have a paragraph with some text, a couple columns. We're going to see how those collapse, so we can go from a desktop to a mobile. Throw some images in the top. Another row that'll have a call to action block with a button. And finally, some footer content. And we may even throw a menu in there as well, just so we can play around with menus as well. So I've already got everything fired up. I've got the server running. I've got my blank email already set. It's kind of nothing's there. And then I've got the starting point. I'm going to keep the default layout. That's kind of important. It's got all the basic stuff in here you need for every email. So I just kind of leave that there. If there's specific things I want to do, or a specific template or style sheet or things I want to include in here, I may modify this, but I kind of leave this alone if I can. From a pages perspective, we're going to create the one main index page, and I've got a couple partials that we're going to include as well, so you can see how to use those. And also as an example of how to do some code reuse. So if we go back here to our mock-up, we're going to want to create a row for an image. And right below that, we're going to want to create another row for some text. And then a third row with two columns. Fourth row with a colored background. And then lastly, we'll have a footer. And we can play around with things as we go along, just to have some examples of how to change things up as you go. So the first piece here, we need to create a row and then a column. And then inside that, we're going to throw an image tag. And I think I had this at 800 by 200, but we can modify that as we go along. Now, if we save that, we can test it as we go along. So there's our image at the top now. We can kind of refer back to our mock-up. So we got that working for us. I don't really have the background color is white, so that's fine for right now. And generally, unless there's a reason to change the color, I like to have a white background just for transparency for images and things like that. So especially for images that may have a background color assigned to them. So that's kind of an easy way to do it. One of the things we may want to do with this as we go along is center things. So centering an image is really easy. You simply wrap the image tag with center tags, and then we'll be done. Now right now you really can't see that because of the way it's rendering, but we'll see it in just a minute as we add more rows. So the next row is going to be, I should probably at some point make some code completion hints for Sublime. That might be something cool to do. Now we want to have one column that goes the whole width for some text. So we're going to want to have some title and the paragraph. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably just do an H2 maybe. I'll say welcome to Foundation for Emails. And then we'll have a paragraph of text. Now, full disclosure, I've already done all this. So, as you know, I'm gonna go grab some content to save me some typing time and save me from typos that I am desperately prone to. Now if we save that and go take a look, now we've got some text there. Stuff isn't really centered. We got everything kind of left justified. And I have a style set up in my apps SCSS file called gray. And what's nice about having even if it's only for temporary use or development use, what's nice about that is I can go into any one of these rows and I can say, for instance, I want to see how that image is covering things. And I can just say class of gray. And as it refreshes, now you'll see how the image doesn't quite, there's a border around here. And that's just part of the normal padding that goes into any element in the email. Now, if we want to get rid of that, there is a way to do that, and that is to use on the row, use a class of collapse. And what that does is it collapses all the borders around that. And now you'll see we're going edge to edge. Now this bottom part here, that's just because of the way the width is for things. There's a bottom, we can mess with that in a little bit. But we have everything centered. In fact, with your collapsed image, we may not even need the centering, but we'll leave that there. I'm going to take the gray out of that, and I'm going to put it down here just so you can see it in action down here. You can see how that works. Now in your settings file, your settings.scss file, there are a lot of settings in here you could modify. And those are covered in the documentation really well. You can change a lot of the padding around things, like here's our global padding and global margins. So you can modify that if you don't like what is generated by default, which is nice because if you have a set of emails that all use the same kind of style, you can define that in your either in your app SCSS file or in your settings file and make it consistent across everything. So we've got our text here, but I want to see how it looks centered. So how are we going to do that? Let's go back to our index page. And what I can do here, there's a couple different ways of doing it. Text is a little bit different than the images. A lot of things you can center with the center tag, just like we did with the image. But with text elements, there's a class called text center. And I'm going to save that. I kind of switched over quick. Hopefully you can see it in the video. It automatically centers that. And I can do the same thing for the text below it if I want to. Just copy that same class, bring it right down here, save it. There we go. You'll notice sometimes the image doesn't quite come in fast enough. It's actually loading it externally, so it's not a fluke of the system, it's just loading it. And now we have all of our text centered. And you can do whatever you want, write text, different text. You can put links in here, all kinds of, just like any other HTML content. All right, so let's take a look at where we are with our mock-up here. We've got the header image, one for desktop, one for mobile. We'll go over that and we'll come back to that in just a little bit. Then we've got our paragraph title, we've got our text. Let's see how it looks here. That's pretty cool. What I can do, let's see if I can get rid of that row there, I think. We'll play around that later on. Now the next one that we're going to add in, if we go back to our prototype, we're going to have 2 columns. So how are we going to do that? Well, one thing we haven't covered yet, I'll show you right now so we can do it for the other elements. If I go back to my email here, right now it's kind of set up for from a dynamic standpoint, you'll see the image at the top kind of shrinks down, and the text will just kind of readjust itself. It'll repaint the screen as the browser changes. So that's really nice responsive design. It's pretty cool. In the Foundation for emails, we actually have two breakpoints. So there's a small and a large. And if you're familiar with the grid system that's used in Foundation for Sites, then that's a bonus for you, because that's half the battle right there. It uses a 12 cell grid system. So if you're familiar with grid systems in CSS, then you're, again, ahead of the game. What we can do here is we can say for this particular row, it's going to take up, for small, it's going to take up 12 spaces, 12 cells. It's going to go all the way across, and we'll do the same for large. And I'm going to copy that same thing down to this row. I'm sorry, I don't want that. I want down to column here. There we go. Now, both of these rows, they will fill up the entire width, regardless of whether or not, what size it is. You'll also notice by doing so, it adds a little bit of a margin on the end. And again, those are adjustments you can make in the CSS file if you want. Now for the next row, we want to have two columns in it. So we're going to make another row. Except this time, we're going to create two columns. What we can do inside this is now put some content in. So I'm going to go back to my master sheet here. I'm going to grab some content, grab a paragraph, bring it back over here, drop that in. I have some other stuff just so you can see that it's different text. You can tell that it's different. Oops. And we're going to drop that one in the other column. Now we have the same situation here. We want to tell the system, because there's two columns, we want to tell it how much space each column is going to use for each size of the screen. Oops, I just messed that up. Can't cut and paste and talk at the same time. So for the small screens, we probably don't want to try to force things side by side. We have our mock-up here, and we've got two columns. And that's great if you have a full-size desktop client. But if you're trying to go to a mobile device, that's going to look really terrible. It's going to squeeze everything down. You'll probably have one or two words in each line. So what we're going to want to do for this small is we want to make the small, each column 12, take up the full width. And you'll see the effect of that in just a minute. But for large, we want each column to take up half the space of the screen. So they'll be side by side. So let's save that, and we'll go take a look at what we've generated. Okay, we've got two columns now here, and right now we're in the large breakpoint. So this is the large size. As we squeeze it down, you'll see it switch from two column to one column. And now it stacks the two columns that we normally had side by side. You're now vertical. And you'll also see that each previous column, now takes up the full width, just like the content above it. So it works out pretty well. Now if you want to add, you can even do things like you can add an image in. And again, I've got a handy dandy image tag all ready to go. And we will go over here, add it in. Where am I here? Now I added a center around the image. That way it'll center that image within the column. And I'll do the similar thing on the second column. But I want to get a slightly different image. So what I'm going to do is just make that 301. That'll force the service to give me a different image. That way we can tell them apart. And now you've got two images here. If we squeeze the content down, boom, it automatically will adjust and make those images stack with the content underneath it. Works pretty well. Now, one of the things I see here is there's not a lot of space between the image and the text. And you could try to do some HTML with that, putting a BR tag or some other hack for that. One of the things that is really nice with Foundation for Emails is they did kind of anticipate that with the spacer tag. Spacer tag takes an attribute of size, and you can make that as, it's really basically a vertical spacer. So let's make it 10 pixels. Does require a closing tag. And I'll just do it for one column just so you can see the difference between the two. And here's the first one. We've got a little bit of a space here, and the second one doesn't have any space. So let's copy that. I can copy it underneath this image here. Save that. And now both of them are the same, at the same spacing. So it's coming together pretty well. Now we can change the size of this. We can probably make this a little smaller if you want to, make it 200 by 200. See how that looks. And it centers it. Now when you get these images start getting smaller, you'll notice that they try to center, but the text is left justified, so the images look off. The images are actually correct, but the text is left justified. So you can either center the text or make the images the same width as the column. So it's kind of your choice how you want to work that. You can also play around with trying to use, and I have done this successfully. I don't want to do it now and get things all out of whack, but you can play with the collapse attribute, class of collapse, with a container element around the image to see if it'll push it out to the full width of the column. So I'm going to go back out those changes just so I've got things looking correct. There we go. Cool. All right. So if we go back to our mockup again, we've got the top header, we've got the paragraph, we've got the two columns set up with images. Now we need a call to action block. So let's do something else here. Oftentimes you want to reuse content. And from a marketing standpoint, oftentimes the call to actions are the same or have the same color, same, there's a lot of repeating stuff. So what we can do is create it once and reuse it several times. So I've created a separate file. This case is called calltoaction.html, and it's in the partials directory. So what I'm going to do is, instead of creating my row in the main file itself, I'm going to create it separately here. And it's going to be one column here. We're going to have some text. Let's do some, say, H5. Okay, and then we're going to we need a button now. So let's take a look at how to do buttons. Buttons are pretty easy. We've got a row right now that has some text in it. It's going to be kind of bold because it's the H5 tag. And now we want to have our call to action button. And our buttons, you can simply put a button here, but you need to have it do something. So go somewhere. Now in this case, I'm just going to put a pound sign just so we can see that it's a clickable link. But you would ideally put in whatever URL you want the person to go to if they click in your email. Click that button in your email. All right, so There's our button, and let's save that. So that's been saved. Now, how do we get this? Now this is done. If we go back to our email, it's not in there yet because we haven't included it yet with the template tag. So let's go back to index, and right here at the bottom we want to be able to put in our include our call to action stuff. So how do we do that? We use the double curly braces, we use a greater than sign, and then the name of the file, call to action. It's going to assume HTML at the end. If we hit save and we refresh, look at this. Now we have click below to take advantage of special offer. And we have a button here. I think I got to put a real URL in here to make it hit the hover effect. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. So now we've got this reusable content, this call to action file. So if you're doing some other pages or other email projects, that file can be reused any number of times. If you have variables in it, you could even pass variables into it. So it's pretty useful. Let's change this to something else. Let's put a site in there. Now we also notice this button here. We want to have that everything centered. Right now everything's left justified. So let's do a couple things to help us out here. First, I'm going to make it gray so I can just use that same class ID again, just so I can see the colors, see where the borders are and all that stuff, how far it goes. Columns, I'm going to put in, just out of to make sure that it's going to follow the rules here. I'm going to put in 12 and 12, so it's going to go full width for both small and large. You could do it different ways. You could switch it to 2 columns if you wanted to. You could do all kinds of crazy stuff. But for right now, I just want to keep it pretty simple. So 12 and 12. And for this, we can do a couple different ways. This I need to do because it's text. This one I'm going to put the class in. Oops. Text center. I'm going to save that. And now you'll see here's the edges of the element, the container, and then I have click below to take advantage of the special offer, and I have the button. The button is still left justified. So let's take the button. Buttons, they are affected by the center tag. So we save that, and there is our handy dandy button. For some reason I'm not getting the hover effect. Okay, it's working, it's just not getting the hover effect. Now the buttons themselves have a number of different options. I'll put a link to the documentation in the video description. But there's a number of different ways you can style these. You can use some of the settings that are in your settings.scss file. There's primary color, secondary color, success and warning, alert, all that kind of stuff. I'll show you those. You can also do some things with the size of the button itself, or the style. So what I can do here is I can say class round. Did I do that right? Did I save it? Let me look at my solution here. I know I did this. Rounded. That's it right there. All right. Good thing I've done this before. Class of rounded. Save that. What that does, it gives you a nice rounded button, which is kind of nice. I mean, a lot of the elements you'll find that you're creating for emails tend to be more boxy because they're table layouts. So having a rounded button is kind of a nice change. You can also do things with the colors. You could also say alert, and that will change the color to whatever your alert color is from your underscore settings.scss file. And again, there's secondary, alert, all this kind of stuff all here. Success, warning, all those different colors. And they give you some basic ones out of the box that you can use. Now for this particular call to action row, I kind of like the gray because that sets it off, but the text is too close to the top. So I turn to my handy spacer tag again. Size is going to equal, let's give it 10. Let's see how that looks. That sets it off a little bit there. Now things are going right to the bottom of the page, but that's just because we're on a browser. You know, if you have something like Litmus or some other tool, you can test it out and see how it looks in a browser. I'm sorry, in an email client. Now the last part we have to do is the footer. Assuming we're all done with this, I think we're good enough for right now. So let's go back here. The footer is also something that tends to be repeated a lot. Generally, the footer is not only going to contain some basic links to other parts of your site, it's going to contain legal text, copyright stuff, you know, all that stuff you find at the bottom of all your emails, disclaimers, all that. So if anything you're going to create that should be in a partial, it's probably your footer, because you're probably going to end up using that several times. So I've created a separate file, footer.html, and no surprise, we do another row. You kind of get the idea by now. And I'm going to go jump over to the solution I have over here. Let's see, how did I do this? All right, we're going to do some, let's do this one first. You probably saw the code already, so that won't be a surprise. I'm going to make this gray as well, just for now. I'm going to make it small 12, large 12, so it goes all the way across. And I'm going to put some copyright text in the very bottom. So we're going to save that. Now if I scroll down a little bit, oh, I can't, it's not there yet. I still have to include that into my main index file. Oops. Now if I save it, now you'll see the text at the bottom. And you can change font, you can add your own classes in the app, your app.scss file, your SAS file, you put all that stuff in there. So if you did want to have a separate font, and oftentimes you will, for the footer, you want it to be smaller. Something else we can do in this footer, and you'll find this is common, we also want this row to be gray to be consistent. Is we want to do a menu of links. Now these tags again are inky tags, and all you have to do is put a starting menu, ending menu, and inside you put items. So let's throw in put a link in. We can copy this one a couple times. This could be a social media icon rather than text if you wanted to. Save that. And now you will see here is our menu at the bottom here. Now you've noticed we've got a few problems already here. This bottom part goes full width. We've got some the white background here, something's not right. So let's figure that out. Let's see. Oh, we don't have any columns. So let's add a column in here. And we also noticed down here, we can still see it at the bottom, my menu isn't centered. I want to center that menu. And again, just like buttons and a lot of other images and other elements, you throw in a center tag. Wrap everything up. Let's get our formatting all nice. Save it. And now we've got some stuff here. It's pretty cool. Now, if you want to add some white space here to break up the call to action, say we want to have some white space right here between the call to action and the footer, we can go back to we have call to action footer. We can simply put a spacer in, our old friend the spacer. Make it 15. Save it. Let's go back, and now we've got some space in there. You can change the color of these links however you want to, again with the style sheet stuff. And let's take a look at it as it squeezes down. You'll see how that all the text wraps and everything looks pretty good. Not bad for our first email. Now, one thing we haven't covered is something to do with, if you want to have a separate image for mobile and one for, desktop stuff. So let's take a look at that for a second. There are some tags that are in the documentation. There's still a couple of bugs they're working out, but it's close to being resolved for some of the, it worked great on a browser, but not in the email client, at least some of them, to actually swap some of those things out. So what you can do, let me take a look at that code. I'll show you how that, I'm going to jump over to the browser again. We're going to go to the Foundation docs. And we go to visibility classes down here. And if you've used the docs at all, you can see the resulting HTML, the table stuff that goes on. And if you click the switch to Inky, it shows you the very simplified stuff that you and I would use. There's two different classes, hide for large and show for large. And under certain circumstances, the hide for large doesn't seem to always work right yet. There are some issues, they're working on some of that. And it says here, due to Outlook support of certain CSS properties, the Foundation for Email's visibility classes should be used in conjunction with conditional comments to ensure that things work in Outlook. Now, that's a whole other video, doing conditional comments and everything within HTML for Outlook, so I'm not going to go into that today. But to swap images out, you can use these hide for large and show for large. So for the desktop ones, you would say show for large, and then you'd have the mobile image hide for large, and then vice versa for the mobile image. You can try all that stuff out here. For instance, if I have here, this call out will only appear on large screens. Now, if I can get this thing, there we go. If I squeeze it down, you'll see how that orange call out box turns blue. Those are the two different versions of it as it's being displayed. So I could try to demonstrate that here, a little difficult at times, but I want to just show you those tags so you can play around with the visibility if you want to. There are really, you can't play too much as far as people immediately want to jump to JavaScript and to the style sheets and start playing with visibility. to try to handle this, but keep in mind this is being deployed to email clients, not to browsers. Not all email clients will render things properly with a full support for CSS. So that is definitely an issue still. So let's go back to our mock-up, and I think we've got all the elements done. We've got our header image, got our paragraph of text, got our 2 columns with the images, call to action block with a button, footer with some copyright content and a centered menu of items. And I think we're pretty good. So I will post the content of the code so you can get a hold of that. And hope this has helped you. And if you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like the videos, please like it. And if you want to have more, subscribe. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.